Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome a very special guest this afternoon at the India Today Conclave 2013, General Bikram Singh, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Sena Medal Gallantry, Vishisht Seva Medal, Aide de Camp. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I have just read out the first 2 rows of medals, first 2 of 6 rows of medals that the General so proudly wears on his chest. When I first met him during the Kargil War of 1999, he was a colonel in the army. He was at the army headquarters in the Military Operations Directorate. I was covering that war. The General is Top Gun. He's commanded the Sikh Battalion. He's Top Gun. Why? Because he's topped virtually every course that he has attended. From the young officers course, he was the brightest young officer in the Indian Army. Not only that, he was judged the coveted dagger. He won the coveted dagger for topping the commando course at the infantry school. At the US Army War College at Pennsylvania, the General was awarded the prestigious International Toastmasters Award for public speaking. Today, General Bikram Singh is speaking on the role of the Indian Army in nation building. It is extremely important today as it was in 1947 when the Indian Army landed in Srinagar and saved Jammu and Kashmir, first from Pakistani raiders and then the Pakistan Army regulars. Today, the role of the Indian Army is extremely critical, not just in Jammu and Kashmir, but across the length and breadth of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, let me invite General Bikram Singh, the 27th Chief of the Army Staff.
Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen. My greetings to you all, and at the very outset, let me thank the India Today group for this invite. And I am indeed privileged to be here because I grabbed the opportunity when I was made this offer for only one reason, that I thought it's important that you all know about your army. Your army, when I say it's the people's army, it's the national army. It's important that you know how we do our business, because generally what is seen of the army is what you see on the television, gun-toting soldiers moving around in Jammu and Kashmir in the northeast, and you perceive army as only using force. I shall touch upon the use of force as well as to how we calibrate the use of force and how democratic we are in the use of force as well. But ladies and gentlemen, army since 1947 has done a lot in terms of nation building. Now, besides fulfilling our constitutional obligations in terms of safeguarding the frontiers of our country, ensuring sovereignty of the country, ensuring territorial integrity of the country, we have to a large extent contributed to nation building in terms of ensuring, generating, and bringing about unity in the country, upholding the secular values which are enshrined in our constitution. We have undertaken socio-economic development in rural areas, which is done in concert with the state governments, and we have done a lot to bring about national pride. Army's role in nation building within the overall theme that has been selected this year by the India Today Conclave, I thought about it. The overarching theme of reinventing a democracy, ladies and gentlemen, does also impact the army, because army is a democratic institution. It's an element of national power. It's an accountable, disciplined, responsive, a potent element of national power that has to adapt. It has to adapt to the national policies framework, the policy framework that is laid down by the government. This seminar, this discussion, this conclave, would be contributing to certain facets of democracy, which in turn would impact on our policy issues in times to come, depending on the decisions taken by the government. But what I'm trying to bring out is that the Indian Army would have to remain relevant to those changes. That's very important. And we are very conscious of the fact that the change is something that is constant in the environment, and we've got to adapt ourselves to the changes in the environment. And changes, they come about by the virtue of the change in environmental realities, the change in terrain configuration where we operate, the changes in our adversaries' methodology of waging war and the use of force, and keeping all these facets in mind, we tend to change ourselves with the view to remain relevant to national aspirations. In fact, something very interesting before I go any further. I was generally prepared to speak for about 40 minutes, but then I was told the total time allotted is about 45 minutes. And then I told my officer who was coordinating with India Today Conclave, I said, look, I generally warm up after 20 minutes. So he told me, he just said, by the time you warm up, you'll be required to sit down for question and answer session. So I said, anyway, I'll be prepared and warmed up for question and answer session. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I shall be very brief to talk about various phases which I talked of. Firstly, in the context of our constitutional obligations. This essentially pertains to, as I said, safeguarding of the frontiers, and also when called upon by the state administrations, by the government, dealing with the internal security situation. Now that's very important because the army, to my way of thinking, I think should not be seen in the internal security domain for too long. It is people's army. It must remain a well-honed tool to be used by the nation when state policy is to be converted into the use of force. And therefore, that notwithstanding, when the nation takes a decision, the army does get involved. And we have a large number of cases where the army has been, committed in the internal security domain under the provisions of the Code of Criminal Procedure. The provisions are sections 129 to 132, wherein when called upon, the army gets involved to deal with law and order situations. In addition, in the local internal security dimension, the aid to civil authority which we undertake, which perhaps you all are not aware of, some of you I would say are not aware of, is that we also take on additional duties in the form of running of essential services. We take on the responsibility as one of the leading agencies, notwithstanding the presence of the institution of the NDMA being over there, which essentially is the primary agency to deal with disaster management. The Indian Army, ladies and gentlemen, gets involved in the management of the disaster situation, emergency situations, and in this we do not wait for any requisitioning. We do not wait for requisitioning because it's our commitment to our people. We get involved expeditiously to provide succor to the people, to assuage their sufferings, to save precious lives and property, and to make sure we are able to give the basic needs and necessities to the population before the personnel and the resources of the NDMA build up. By no means we are trying to undermine the NDMA's capability, but given our deployment in the country, which is along the length and breadth of our country, along all the border areas, we are placed to be the first responders in case of any contingency that arises as a result of disaster or emergency situation. And therefore, the Indian Army in the past has been involved, and let me tell you, if you see the law and order per se, is 2,000, roughly 700 times our columns have been called out since our independence. And if you see, overall columns that have come about are over 5,500. In other words, this is one commitment we have undertaken which does not catch the eye of a normal citizen of ours. And he does not perceive and does not see what the Indian Army is doing. So in addition to the internal security, in which law and order is one aspect, we have the dealing with disaster situations, we also have our role of running of essential services. We have been requisitioned almost 56 times in this regard. We do run essential services which are declared by the government as essential services, and in case there are strikes, in case there are impediments in the functioning of certain services, we do get involved with our resources. We got our tier resources, which are specialized units. They are departmental units, which get involved. For example, we have medical tier units. We got our tier units which deal with the oil sector. We got our tier units which run railways in case required. So we have these resources which have been requisitioned almost 56 times since independence, and we've been able to do our job and make sure that a commoner, a citizen, does not suffer. The government does not suffer, the state governments do not suffer, and various departments do not suffer. I would like to highlight, ladies and gentlemen, a few concerns with regard to our involvement in internal security dimension. When I said that the army should not be seen for too long, what I imply is that this instrument of national power should be kept honed ready to deal with situations which warrant the government to use force against any external threat. In the internal security dimension, we get involved, but the only concern which we have always raised is that we should be used as an instrument of last resort, consequent to the optimal utilization of other agencies. Now, when I say this, our involvement as per CRPC, which is of the vintage of 1973, ladies and gentlemen, in the last 40 years, a lot of changes have come about in India. Changes with regard to development of our communications, the prowess of our police forces, the capacity of our central armed police forces, and given this kind of ability, the capacity and the capability which today exists with the state governments, I suppose we should be able to deal to the extent possible with situations given the resources of the police and the paramilitary forces, and the army should be called in as an instrument of last resort for the reasons that I just spelled out. Now, the other thing which generally we get back to the government, while it's a constitutional obligation, since it is given in the Code of Criminal Procedure, and we have to go in as per law of the land, we do get back to the government, ladies and gentlemen, in situations where there are religious overtones, where there are ethnic overtones, or where we find the students involved. Now, why? The reason is that the Indian Army champions the core value of secularism. We champion the core values of our Constitution. And therefore, it's better that we do not get involved in those, because we are a heterogeneous lot. Being a secular army, we respect all religions. In fact, for that matter, in the army, the religion of the troops is the religion of an officer. That's how we operate. And the other thing when I said about the students is that I think it's better we don't get involved in situations where the students are involved for only one reason, that students are the reservoir from where we are going to get our recruitment and we are going to get our officer and GCOs and our other ranks and our all ranks. And therefore, I think it's best left that we don't get involved in these agitations. However, when it comes to external use of force, we are always ready. But I wish to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that when we get involved in the internal security conflict, we adopt a people-friendly approach. And I must tell you this other day, in my office I had a foreign visitor, an Air Chief Marshal of one of the countries, who happened to ask me, he says, General, what is the reason that the Indian Army is much sought after and really praised in the United Nations? And the only thing I told him was that, look, the basic fundamental difference is that our use of force is more to assist in the return of rule of law and state authority. Our use of force is to ensure the right of that particular host country. It runs in the entire area, in every nook and corner of its territory. And therefore, the use of the force by the army is calibrated. And I wish to highlight the same aspect, that when we use force in the internal security dimension, ladies and gentlemen, it is virtually by ensuring restrictive rules of engagement which are governed by the legal and moral constraints, because we are fighting our own people. Unless it's a foreign terrorist, we use a calibrated force to make sure he's neutralized. You wouldn't have seen any time our artillery, our mortars, our tanks, our machine guns being used against any of the terrorist threats which has occurred either in Jammu and Kashmir or in the Northeast. Because we believe in economy of effort, we believe in people-friendly operations, we believe in surgical operations, operations which are aimed at generating groundswell for peace, operations that are aimed at, as I said earlier, enhancing the rule of law, state authority, enabling the writ of the state and the government of India to be extended to every nook and corner of our country. And therefore, the force is calibrated in this regard. So what I wish to highlight was that while we should be sparingly used, but when used, let me tell you, under the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, like for example under 58, we are used in the Northeast, and Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1990, we are used in Jammu and Kashmir. We've been there for a long time, but some, of course, let me tell you, the media generally asks, when is it going to end? I must tell you, these are the operations of minds. The center of gravity, ladies and gentlemen, in operations which are internal in nature, which are in the internal security dimension, vis-a-vis the wars which we fight a conventional war, the center of gravity in this case, in the internal security dimension, is the population. And therefore, we cannot afford to use excessive force. It's the population that provides strength, freedom of maneuver, and will to fight to the terrorists. And therefore, all our operations are aimed at the population to make sure we wean them away, while upholding the rule of law, state authority, while upholding the law of the land, and while affording and giving full respect to the human rights in the environment. That is the stance we operate with. Right? Our contribution, when you see in the backdrop of unity and championing the core values, let me just tell you that there is not a single core value that is enshrined in the Constitution that the Indian Army does not champion. When I talked of secularism, I mentioned that we have a process where officer inherits the religion virtually of the soldier he is commanding. We have dharmstals, where all religions, troops of all religions, they go under one roof. And we have the sanctum sanctorums of all the religions, their little temples and mosques and everything in the one roof where people go and bow their head and pay obeisance. And this is done by the officers. They will pay obeisance at all the 5 or 6 holy places that are created under one roof. So we do look out for this. And the other thing, when you talk of democracy, the other core value which we champion is in terms of the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, we uphold the civil authority while carrying out operations even in the internal security dimension. The primacy of the civil control remains. And this, incidentally, is in conformity with the Supreme Court judgment of 27 November 1997, wherein it very clearly stipulates, and we honor that direction to the Army, and we ensure that at no stage our operations are undertaken suo moto on a standalone mode without the consultation of the state administration. And that is the reason you would find that wherever troops are involved, we have the unified headquarters, we have mechanisms where we are able to synergize the operational intelligence and the developmental efforts of the Army with various other agencies to make sure we move ahead. So the other aspects, when you see, like for example, we are apolitical, we respect human rights. While on this issue of human rights, let me tell you, and equality. Other day on the TV, I was seeing some discussions taking place on the gender balance, gender equality. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, we are committed to this philosophy, to this policy of the country towards ensuring gender equality and gender balance in the Army. I must tell you that I had ordered a study in November last year. Only a couple of days back, I had the first presentation. And we are identifying additional slots, almost 200 of them, where we will be sending our women officers. We are trying to give them more opportunities, because this is a very valuable, very motivated resource. And let me tell you, our women officers, they are physically fit, they are mentally robust, they have well-ripened mental faculties, and they have tremendous intellectual prowess. And this very precious resource, ladies and gentlemen, has got to be made use of by us. And therefore, when I talk of the core values of the Constitution, I wish to highlight to you that there are no double standards. When you see those discussions on TV, we are committed to it. I just had a study which has come to me, and as I said, the presentation was made. We are going to expand, we are going to increase the avenues for the women officers. So this is going to be an issue of. Right, when you talk of, along with this, contributing to the unity of the country, I think the greatest way we have been able to ensure this, that we have been able to deal with and neutralize every possible centrifugal force, every possible vociferous tendency in the areas that have been declared disturbed or where we've been committed. We've been able to deal with every inimical element and force which had secessionist designs. I think that is contribution we have made towards the unity of the nation. We have disallowed any of the elements in the country to further their agenda with regard to any secessionist designs, or for that matter, anything which had vociferous tendencies or tendencies to get away from the country and the Constitution of India, and not to respect it, and not to respect the rule of law and state authority. So this is something which we have contributed, ladies and gentlemen, in the wars that we have fought. We have made a tremendous sacrifice in this regard. But I would say no sacrifice is big for our national security, for the national cause. We have lost almost 22,443 officers, JCOs, and men while fighting various wars, right from the time which Gaurav mentioned when we had the raiders getting into Jammu and Kashmir, 47-48, to the last war that we fought in 1999. I wanted to bring out this figure because these 22,443 great martyrs require the recognition. They require a salute by the nation. And they require appreciation by the nation. And that's the reason I thought I'll tell you that it's a heavy price that the army had paid, but we have ensured the unity. Now, adding to the unity, ladies and gentlemen, is also by our ethos, our culture. We are today having roughly 19,000 ex-servicemen in the environment in our society. And we are contributing almost 6,000 again after we have our officers, JCOs, NCOs, and men superannuating every year. So with this kind of resource, human capital, which is getting into the environment, which is disciplined, which is motivated, which has gone out with having inherited the core values of integrity, of loyalty, of duty, of respect, selfless service, duty and honor, courage. These people are contributing in a very big way in terms of binding our communities together, the people together, and retaining the unity of our country. And this aspect, generally, ladies and gentlemen, is ignored. I would take the opportunity of this particular forum to reach out to everybody that these people are officers, JCOs, men, when they go out, they have tremendous potential. They are not only meant for security duties. Each one of them is aware of the management aspects. Each man is indulged. Every NCO, every JCO, every officer on daily basis is undertaking forecasting, planning, organizing, directing, coordinating, and controlling. He is dealing with the management aspects every day. He's a leader. He's a leader of character. And these people, I would request if they can be utilized by our society in a more befitting manner. We've got to harness and leverage their potential. They have tremendous potential. And I would appeal to all of you through this forum that there are state governments who have laid down a certain amount of percentage of quota for our soldiers when they retire. Some state governments do not have it. I would appeal to all to look into this aspect to make sure that our soldiers who are motivated, who are primed, who are disciplined, and who can contribute in a very big way towards unity of the country and contribute towards the attainment of the end state of those particular corporate sectors or wherever they go, they must be given due recognition and employed fruitfully. Now, a word about when I say the economic, socio-economic development that we have undertaken over a period of time. I wonder if you are aware of the fact that our border road organization has constructed, since independence or since it came into being, 43,000 kilometers of road. It has constructed 481 bridges and 19 airfields. Leave aside the other infrastructure that is being made on a daily basis. These were the key major benchmarks of their commitment towards the nation. This is being undertaken by our engineers as well, ladies and gentlemen. And in addition to this, we have our combat engineers who are employed as part of Ops Bhavna, Ops Marathon. These are the civic action projects which run along one of the lines of our operations which we carry out in the internal security domain, where we again are involved in ensuring the basic elementary infrastructure being developed in certain parts, in remote areas of our country. And also we focus on empowering the local people. And especially in the areas that are afflicted by insurgency, the focus is on children, the next generation. The focus is on women. Because we believe that if the women are taken care of well, a mother or a sister will be able to ensure that the terrorist, her brother, her son, is weaned away and brought into the mainstream, and they can play a pivotal role. And therefore, as part of our healing touch, as part of our people-friendly operations, our stance, we are dealing with the people in a manner, we are carrying out these operations in a manner that we are able to provide the basic elementary infrastructure, and we are empowering people in certain areas. Now, I know I'm running short of time. While I was about to get warmed up, I think I'll have to finish. But as I said earlier, I'll take on the questions.
Question and answer session that's waiting for you.
Yeah, okay, right. Just last point I want to tell you is that we have added immensely again, ladies and gentlemen, to the national pride. You take any sports, You take Olympics, you take Asiad, you take Commonwealth Games. The 2 silver medalists after independence are from the army. Kalaris Rathore, and we have Subda Major Vijay. And let me assure you, we have a focused commitment towards sports today in the army, and in times to come, you shall see more number of medals being won by the army men, and you shall find more pride coming into our society by the virtue of your army, which belongs to you all. Well, I think I will take on questions now, because I could carry on, as I said earlier. I just got warmed up. And
thank you very much, General. Very kind of you. The General will take his questions standing like a commander. He always leads from the front. May I ask you the first question, sir? Of course, we have a panel of experts, 4 experts there: Manvendra Singh, Monica Chansoria, Wajahat Khan, and Air Marshal Kak. They'll ask you questions. But the first question, we've had an encounter in Jammu and Kashmir just 2 days ago. We lost 5 brave CRPF personnel. Hours after that, Union Minister Farooq Abdullah says AFSPA has to go. What's your take on that?
Look, firstly, I think my heart goes out to the families of these 5 brave CRPF men who in the line of duty have made the ultimate sacrifice. I wish to convey my condolences to the family of these great soldiers, bereaved families. This incident, of course, let me tell you, is something that we've seen after a very long time. This only depicts the emboldened stance of the terrorists, which for a very long time we had not evinced in the internal security dimensions of Jammu and Kashmir, and especially in the counterinsurgency arena. But I shall not like to comment on any statement made by any politician, because as a soldier I think I should not be doing that. But I shall give you my way of thinking, my own opinion in this regard, and you could correlate that to what has been said. Look, firstly, as I talked about the Supreme Court judgment of 27 November 1997, it very clearly stipulates that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, its revocation, its extension is to be done by the governor of a state or by the central government. We only make our recommendations. Army is only contributing to decision making. But if I was to be asked, I feel time is not ripe at the moment to tamper with this framework. It's an enabler, it's an enabling act, and we should not take away Armed Forces Special Powers Act at this juncture. I mean, you've seen for yourself wherein they've come and killed 5, wounded 7, and gone away, and I'm told two of the soldiers who were wounded are critical. It's a heavy price we are paying, and I think it's important to remain on guard. It's important to observe, wait and watch how things move. It's important to understand the contours of the security environment before we take a decision. Decision must be pragmatic. It should be in the national interest. It should not be politicized. That's the only thing I have to say.
Thank you very much, sir. Monica, would you like to go first?
General, let's speak a bit about China. There is a projection that China is boosting its defense spending 10.7%, approximating to approximately $119 billion. Do you think that in the long run, the growing asymmetry between the Indian military and the Chinese military is going to grow to a greater extent, and that could cause a greater sort of military assertiveness by the People's Republic of China in settling certain disputes with India? And more importantly, how would you define India's current military equation with the People's Republic of China?
Right, your second part of the question first. As you all know that, ladies and gentlemen, we are engaged in a strategic and cooperative engagement at the moment with China. Our trade is going to be increasing to almost $100 billion by 2015. So therefore, we are engaged with China today on the economic front in a very big way. And geoeconomics are very important in concert with geopolitics. Now, as far as military is concerned, we have good equations at the moment on the line of actual control. I must tell you this, I've commanded Eastern Army, and let me tell you with conviction that we do have one odd incident, but we also have mechanisms in place. They are at the tactical level, at the lower level, which are taken care of. And there is, at the moment, peace and tranquility along the line of actual control. In fact, the CBMs are in place, the confidence building measures, which are going to be further augmented in times to come. We are going to engage them, and therefore there is bonhomie along the line of actual control as far as we are concerned. The other aspect, the first part of your question where you talked of the asymmetry, which you feel might come up given the allocation of financial resources to the Chinese and the way they are coming about. Well, let me tell you that wars, when they are fought, we do create for capability. They have a capability. We are creating for our capability. But we do not perceive the asymmetry affecting us in any way. Because there are facets of operational art, there are facets of strategy. We are also going in for enhancing our combat power. We are getting accretions into our combat power. But this is a capability we are developing. It is not aimed at any particular country. I wish to qualify this. That we are also modernizing. Even China is modernizing. But it is not that they have stated anywhere that that resource of theirs is aimed towards India. Similarly, we are creating a capability. And we are going in for it. We are getting all the support from the government. I'm told our Mountain Strike Corps is in the advanced stages of finalization. And I'm certain about it, that the funds, the financial health will not preclude the national security agenda being put on the back burner. I'm certain about it, that the national polity will ensure that the funds are allotted and the Mountain Strike Corps is created. It's a national requirement. This is required by the nation. But it's a capability, as I said earlier, not aimed towards China. It's a capability India requires to cater for various contingencies which may crop up along any of our borders.
Manvendra?
So much has been made about the supposed agreement between India and Pakistan over Siachen, and the fact that an agreement is on the table, but the army is thwarting it. Can you put some light on that?
Look, army has given its point of view, as I said earlier. Decision has to be by the national polity, by the government. We don't take decisions in this regard. The nation has to take decisions in this regard. But please understand, it is our area. It is strategically important. Why are we talking about own area being given to somebody? I have not understood. It defies all logic.
Air Marshal Kag?
Thank you, Chief. That was a very focused and very deeply thoughtful presentation. I go along entirely with you on what you recommended, that the army must get out of the internal security role. But as the famous British poet once put it, T.S. Eliot, between the idea and the reality falls the shadow. It perhaps goes without reason that the paramilitary forces and the central police organizations are not equipped to actually perform effective counterinsurgency duties. On the other hand, there are also views expressed in the media that army actually does not want to give the space away in terms of counterinsurgency. Mischievous as these may appear, because it gives them a role in national polity and, media and everything else. I don't agree with that. But given that you've been chief for 9 months, when do you think you can actually achieve the idea that you propounded by way of reality? Thank you.
If you ask me frankly, sir, maybe the acoustics part, could you just repeat the later part of your question? You meant that today the police is acquiring prowess, the CAPF are acquiring a prowess, and we are not keen to give away our...
No, I was saying that is a general perception. I don't agree with it.
Sir.
But when do you think we will actually have a situation in terms of time?
Where we'll be able to deal it from...
Then we'll be dealing from.
Right. Look, sir, the point is that, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, had I known that we have colleagues from the Army, from the Air Force and the Navy, I would have been more military in my profile and thought process. I would have topped off even the Navy and the Air Force. I was basically talking on the Army. But, sir, let me tell you that it's very difficult to benchmark, because there are large number of external factors which are impacting and impinging on the security environment. If we had entirely our own arena fully isolated, we would have been able to perhaps explain and decide on certain benchmarks as to when we can go out. In this case, you would have seen that the infiltration, we have the entire infrastructure of the terrorists is intact across the line of control. You have seen the infiltration being calibrated from time to time. This incident that has occurred, one of the terrorists killed has been identified as a Pakistani, a foreign terrorist. Now, with this kind of involvement, it's very difficult to perceive. But what I'm coming to is that we are all working towards strengthening the hands of the state government and the state administration. That is the way we are operating. And the day the state government feels they are strong enough to deal with it, period, we go ahead. But point is, this decision should not be politicized. This decision in the national interest has got to be taken in the backdrop of the violence profile. It has got to be taken in the backdrop of what can happen. The futuristic contours we got to see and then take a decision. And I think we should not be in a tearing hurry in this regard. We need to be very, very confident that there will be no relapse to anarchy, to terrorism. The clock shall not be put back, and we shall not be left in a position of disadvantage. Let me tell you this. That's the only thing I wish to say. It is not that we want to continue with it. Who wants to fight terrorists? In fact, I must tell you this. We are losing our officers, our JCOs and men by the day, ladies and gentlemen. Who wants to die? Please understand this. We are not getting fun out of dying in that area. We are there because the nation wants us to be there. We are there because that area is declared disturbed. We are not there for fun. We are not enjoying our carrying out these operations. We are there because we are mandated to do so. And in the large national interest, overarching interest, we got to do that. And if we do that, and we do not bring about the proper conditions in the arena where we are involved at the moment, which is disturbed, things are going to be bad. And one thing I wish to highlight at the expense of taking 1 minute more.
No, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, whenever the situation in any of the insurrectionist arenas improves, you will find the level of human rights violations and allegations going up. It's a typical case. When things are bad, when the chips are down, when everybody wants the army to come in, nobody talks about anything. When the things are improving, that the situation is transcending from the public order to law and order domain, you find a lot of rhetoric which is anti-army creeping up. It's for the you all to decide. It's your army. You must take a decision. The nation must take a decision. The government has to take a decision. It's not by the army. But my only submission to everybody is that decision has got to be pragmatic. It has got to be taken in the interest of the national security, and should not put the clock back and put the armed forces in a position of disadvantage.
Let's get in a voice from the other side of the line of control. Wajahat Khan. Go ahead.
General, thank you for interacting with me. I think perhaps this might be the first time that a Pakistani journalist has been given this opportunity. And I must thank you as well as the group for arranging this. I'm going to try to take as little time as possible. This is a 4-part question. Before I start, my condolences for all the men who died the other day in Srinagar. War is hell, and terror should be condemned in all its forms, for starters. There was a joke cracked when I came here earlier today by one of the editors of the India Today that try not to create an international incident. And then she sort of took the joke a little forward and said, might as well create an international incident. As a reporter, it's not my job to do either one of those things. I'm just going to try to ask a couple of counter-narrative questions, counter-intuitive questions, which will open up the debate a little further. Firstly, it'll be nice to know about Siachen. Siachen is considered the low-hanging fruit of the Indo-Pak military divide. There's people in and out of uniform on the other side of the border who think that it can be achieved as a confidence-building measure to further things forward. The narrative there is that yourself and your institution in particular think that they are in a superior position and there is no need to pluck that fruit. That's part one. Part two is some confusion about the LOC incident starting from earlier this year. The terrible beheadings, etc., etc. We still keep on hearing it from your defense minister, that there was SSG commandos, etc. involved. I don't want to get into semantics about who did what, but there was interesting journalism from this country as well, saying that perhaps it was the incident of a bunker being created by a battalion commander, a colonel or something, which could have caused that. This is a story which appeared in your very own newspaper in this country. I'm talking about the Hindu and Praveen Swami story in particular. That sort of created confusion about who started what. It'll be nice to settle that debate, with your permission. Thirdly, China...
Can we take on one by one?
Sure.
I'll be able to respond better.
I'm not going to say no to a four-star
I'll be able to respond better, because the first thing you talked of Siachen, and I've already given part of the answer earlier. Let me assure you, any confidence-building measures have to be preceded by both the militaries, both the armies, both the countries addressing the trust deficit which exists today. I think that is something we have to go into, because we cannot be talking of something else and doing something else. And I need not qualify this. I think you fully understand. I'll give you a small example. I remember I was the army spokesman during Kargil War, which Gaurav brought out, and Gaurav was a young, budding journalist at that point of time. And I remember the stance that had been adopted by Pakistan, by the Pakistani army, that look, these are not our chaps. And now you have your former chief, who's a great soldier. I do respect all soldiers, and across the board, this is the profession of arms, where you respect each other. But he is now acknowledging, and their own people acknowledging, that he came in and visited the areas where the Pakistani troops had intruded. Now, this is a trust deficit, if you see. On one side, you're saying they are our chaps at that point of time, and now these very people who were contesting that assertion of ours are acknowledging today that they were there in our area. So, the first point is that let's first address this. Let's be sensitive to each other's aspirations. Let's move ahead with civility. Let's underscore the basic norms of war fighting. And I'm coming to the second point along with this, is regarding what was talked of as part of the beheading. Let me tell you, we are a great, robust democracy, and we have freedom of speech. And as a result of this, we had a number of our correspondents reporting on various things. Well, so be it. As I said, it's a democracy, and the strength lies in freedom of speech. But let me, as the Chief of the Army Staff, clarify to you, which I clarified on the 14th of January during the media interaction. We have not crossed over anywhere on the 6th of January, as alleged by the Pakistani army, to carry out any operations across the LC. And therefore, on the 8th, when it was done, I think it was done to legitimize this particular action, to justify this action of yours. Or when I say sorry, I'm sorry when I say from the Pakistani army. But the issue is that these things have got to be dealt with at the local level. What is not acceptable is deviating from the laid down norms, the rules of engagement, beheading the soldier and taking away his mortal remains, his head, as a trophy. That's not done. And I think that is something which had to be condemned very strongly, which was done. We have conveyed our concerns. It has been conveyed even at the political level. But what I'm coming to is that these are the facets, these are the aspects which add to the confidence-building measures. This term has got to be preceded by addressing the trust deficit. We'll talk of CBM not even 10 years from now, if the way things are going on the way they are at the moment. You cannot afford to keep this tap of exporting terrorism to India as part of your strategy or whatever it is at the local level. Maybe the local commander is doing it. That has got to be put an end to. Only then we can move forward. I mean, once we are told, look, please come and see, there is no terrorist camp over here, we've been able to take stock of the terrorists, then only things will move. We can't have double standards where you say, look, they are not in our control, yet you got non-state actors, they are bleeding us, and you want us to shake hands with you at the military level. I think it's not done. We've got to be fair, and we've got to have an even level playing field.
Can I quickly bring in Rahul Kanwal? Let me take a couple of questions from the audience, and then I'll...
Can I follow up?
Okay, there's a follow-up question. Go ahead.
I want to execute my right as a guest. General, thank you for that clarification. I mean, you talk about I guess you can say, the lack of decorum when it comes to owning up to the war itself. I understand that. But when progressives bring up the same issue with men in uniform or who have been in uniform, and we bring this up, the India-centrism of the military institutions in my country. We are given certain numbers which, and I'm going to take a lead from Monica's China question here, that when we bring up digits that, listen, I mean, India is supposed to be looking at China now. Get over it, right? Move on. The threat matrix has changed. India's threat perception has changed and evolved as well. We get blasted with statistics about the formations on the ground, the squadrons on the ground, which are Pakistan-centric still. I was talking to the Air Marshal about this earlier before we started. I'd like to hear your perspective, that there's a certain skew, there's a balance which is still Pakistan-focused, yet the narrative is that we're looking at China, not Pakistan. Let's move on from this side. I want to settle that. And though it's none of my business, because it's your country's internal debate, it scares me slightly that when Mr. Chidambaram speaks to an audience much like this one and says, listen, we would scrap AFSPA tomorrow, except, and I'm paraphrasing of course, but we can't because the men in uniform in this country in charge don't want it to happen. And then we have the host, of course, ask the same question, and it just seems to me that, and I fear, coming from a country where there has been a fear of an establishment embellished permanently, which is only now going away perhaps because we fought for democracy and we continue to fight for it. It disturbs me as a neighbor to see signs of that happening and being embellished perhaps in the form of AFSPA and your institution's point of view about how it is necessary to be still implemented. I'd like to know about that.
Two things. Let me first clarify that India is a peace-loving nation. Number two, the Indian Army, as I brought out earlier, is an accountable, potent, responsive, and disciplined element of national power. We believe in the authority, the civil authority. We respect civil authority, I brought out earlier in my talk. And any decisions, any actions that the Indian Army will take shall be supported by the national polity, would be on the direction of the national polity, and would be an extension of our state policy. And as I said earlier, we are a peace-loving nation. It is not our state policy to wage war. India has gone to war only when the war has been thrust upon us. If you see historically, please, you will see that India has fought war. It has changed its policy to the use of force only when we have been compelled and the war has been thrust upon us. Now, our formations, our deployment along the IB, let me clarify to you, is a normal deployment in our cantonments. They are the normal exercises that we carry out from our cantonments, and it's a normal activity that takes place. It need not bother you. You take it from the Army Chief. They are not aimed at vitiating the environment. They are by no means trying to give a message to you of any kind. These are normal activities we carry out to remain ready and relevant to the national aspirations. They may be anywhere. This is to create a capability, which I said earlier, which is devoid of any borders, which is devoid of any country. We are basically doing that. And therefore, you need to be rest assured that this accountable, responsive, disciplined element of national power shall do exactly what the nation tells it to do, and there will be nothing done at the lower level. And therefore, let me express your concern that in a democracy we are raising our voice. Please let me tell you again this. I am one man who respects the civil control, the civil authority to its hilt. I'm very clear on this. I understand the political military arena. I understand the entire grand strategy, how is it evolved, where the army stands, what is the role of the army in a democracy. I'm fully conversant with it. And let me tell you, we know where to stop. We know the red lines. We know beyond which not to make a recommendation to the national polity. So let me tell you, our recommendations when they are made with regard to AFSPA, wherever they are in line with the national interest, because there is nothing more important to an army chief, to an army man, than the national interest and national security. And therefore, the recommendations that are made are in conformity with national security. They are not based on any personal, any parochial, any army-centric agenda. Please understand that. We are a great democracy, a very robust democracy, and we are an element of national power. We give strength to our nation as far as this comprehensive national power profile is concerned.
Yeah. Rahul Kamal, Managing Editor, Headlines Today.
General, with respect, I'd like to contest the Army's position on AFSPA. AFSPA was implemented in 1958 on an experimental basis for 6 months in the Northeast. In the last 6 decades, insurgencies have only flared in the Northeast and in Kashmir. The army, despite its best efforts, is seen as an occupation force by the locals of the state of Jammu and Kashmir and also in the Northeast. You have laid out the army's reservations to the revocation of AFSPA, and as an army officer's son myself, I understand fully the army's sensitivities on why AFSPA, if the army is deployed, should not be revoked. My question to you is this: do you think the only way forward is for the political establishment to overrule the army's objections? It's a catch-22 situation. Till the time AFSPA continues, people in Kashmir will continue to think of India and the Indian army as an occupation force. We have to give peace and opportunity, and the only way to do that is at some point in time for some prime minister to put his job on the line and to take the risk and to say, I will take this controversial decision. I'm not sure whether it will lead to greater peace, but in the last 6 decades we've seen, with the presence of the Indian army, with the presence of AFSPA, we haven't found peace either in Kashmir or in the Northeast. Are you prepared for a date in the future where either yourself or some other chief, sir, is overruled by the civilian establishment and AFSPA is revoked?
Firstly, let me tell you that given robust democracy we are, I brought out earlier, given our accountability, of course, the decision by the national polity is supreme. There's no doubt in anybody's mind. When the nation takes a decision, when the government takes a decision, it is supreme. It's got to be respected. We are only making recommendations to the government. We are only giving out the ground realities and only enabling decision making from the point of view of our inputs. It's ultimately the decision of the government, as I said earlier. But a word about when you say occupation army, I mean, this is one term, ladies and gentlemen. I've had tremendous experience of carrying out operations in Jammu and Kashmir. And let me tell you, this word off and on comes up. It's used by the media. It's used by a large number of players of the environment. But trust me, if you go and see the task that has got to be carried out, we have already got back into certain bases. We are carrying out people-friendly operations. We have reduced our visibility on the ground. We have ensured that we have passed on certain responsibilities to the state police and the CAPF. Yet we keep an eye on that because we do not want the clock to be put back, as I said earlier. We do not want the entire situation to get back into what it was earlier. And therefore, what I'm saying is that we would go by the decision of the government. It's only the bounden duty of the chief to put across to the government that, look, these are the ground realities, and I think we need to take a very pragmatic decision in this regard. And decision making, let me tell you, it's difficult because there are a large number of pulls and pressures in the environment. There are a large number of pressures on the decision makers. And it happens always. As I said earlier, when it starts off, nobody has any point to give. And rightly so, when things are improving, people want the revocation of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. They want people out from there. They want the army out from there. But as I said earlier, it has got to be a pragmatic decision. It should not be benchmarked. It should not be politicized. It should be seen, benchmarked only purely with the security situation and also keeping in mind the shape of things to come, the possible shape of things to come. Prognosis of the situation. You know what is happening in the neighborhood. Would you like to wait and watch? Could there be a spillover? And if that happens, we should not be taken by surprise. I think prudence demands, ladies and gentlemen, that we are operationally balanced. But as I said earlier, decision is decision. When taken by the government, we shall relocate ourselves. Yeah.
General Bikram Singh, many thanks for your free, frank and fearless debrief here at the India Today Conclave. Many thanks, sir.